All right, welcome back to the Infowars Money Bomb 2015. I'm your host, Kit Daniels. I'm mainly a writer for the website. I also do some video reports. You can find those on YouTube at Resistance News. And I'm joined by my fellow writer, Mikhail Thalen. How are you doing?
Pretty good, Kit. How about yourself?
Good, good. So I wanted to talk to you about this whole, you're basically I think what you'd call a security expert online, correct?
That's one of the things I mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. And also, so I wanted to bring up this whole thing about the Stasi. Recently in the news, you know, you saw the whole migrant crisis from Europe coming over from Syria and whatnot. Even the law, they're not even from Syria. So they're flooding into Germany because Germany is one of the countries that'll give them free welfare, free goodies, whatnot. But now the Germans, like the native Germans, are all freaking out because, you know, all of a sudden they got like millions of refugees that are in their country. They're likely not going to assimilate. Yeah. They're on welfare. They're probably not going to be able to get jobs. They just don't really mesh well with the country. And they're even telling like school, they're having these refugees camps all over Germany, and they're telling like the kids at like a public school next door is like, hey, you can't dress like in short skirts. We don't want to offend the Muslims in this refugee camp. But it's like they're giving the keys to the people visiting from out of town to their house and then letting them run the house and tell them what to do. So and what's really interesting to me about it is recently the Germans, they hired an ex-Stasi officer to go online and keep Germans and other people in Germany from complaining about it, calling it hate speech, and then they fine them, no judge, no jury. So it's we got that clip ready, guys? All right, yeah, let's go to that clip.
28-hour global broadcast is now 24 minutes in. Coming up in the next segment, I'm going to read for radio and TV listeners and viewers the 2-day schedule, the 28-hour broadcast. That's a day and 4 hours, so it spans over 2 days. You're going to have the Alex Jones Show the first 3 hours, then Overdrive with Anthony Gucciardi and Dr. Edward Group, then David Knight with Gerald Celente, Jakari Jackson and Leanne McAdoo. Then you'll have the Infowars Nightly News with David Knight. Then you'll have Mystery Science GOP Debate with David Knight, Jakari Jackson, and Leanne McAdoo. I'll also be popping into the end of that. And then I will host basically 10 to midnight with Larry Nichols in a special documentary up there in Arkansas, interviewing him, where he goes to so many of the key places. See, I said I'll tell you next segment. I just start doing it now. Then midnight to 1 a.m., Rob Dew and Leo Zagami from Rome, the special documentary shot in Rome with him, extremely powerful, inside the Vatican. Joe Biggs, Darren McBreen, with Larry Pinckney of the good Black Panther Party, the original Black Panther Party, that was not kill the cops and cause race war. That's why the government shut them down. 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., Joe Biggs, with a whole bunch of special guests. We've got Paul Joseph Watson, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., Kit Daniels and Rob Jacobson, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., Kit Daniels and Mikhail Thalen, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., Paul Joseph Watson and Rob Dew, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., and then we have the video premiere of Demonic Possession of Vatican Exposed with Leo Gazami, exclusive interview, and then we have the Alex Jones Show with Larry Klayman and more back tomorrow for 3 hours, and then an hour of Overdrive after that. So that is what is coming up. I need to get into the news now, but coming up at the start of the next segment, I'll go to Jakari Jackson, or I'll go to Darren McBreen, or I'll go to Rob Jacobson, really talented video editors. And they'll put together something that talk radio's done for decades. A 1 minute, a 2 minute, a 3 minute promo using interesting clips from the news and current events mixed in with movies and things. And I started doing this, taking clips of films like 1984 and Brazil and others, and mixing it in with my own show or other news events and airing it on Access TV 20 years ago. And folks really liked it. And then it became some of the first viral videos, once viral video was allowed to operate, and there were some platforms in the last 16, 17 years. But we've really, I think, brought it to a new level here. We have new ones every week. Darren McBreen has spent a few weeks off and on working on the one we're going to premiere today, because The Matrix is one of the best allegories or parables or parallels in fiction to the type of world we're entering into. Literally. That's where the technocracy, where the THX 1138, Brave New World, Philip K. Dick, Wirehead, cyberpunk dystopia is going, because it's a plan to take us there. The globalists have a brand new God, the God of false reality, the God of synthetic death. And I'll assure you, studying it and peering into it, swimming in it, that it is not a good place to go. And you can see the fruits of it all around you. So there's the war between false reality and reality, and all we're offering is the truth, nothing more. Now, to illustrate why independent, liberty-based, naked media is so important, there's an article on Infowars.com right now. Now, when I first learned about something similar to this in 2003 from a news site, Al Martin Raw, I went to the Congressional Funding Office online. It wasn't BizOps at the time, it was another one. And I actually found where Marcus Wolf was paid $900,000 in 1 year alone, and over several years, he was paid even more. It was like $3 million, to establish the Department of Homeland Security. Now, again, back then, I thought I was hardcore and knew a lot, but I thought that was made up. I mean, I had the guy on the show. I said, I don't believe it. I went and looked it up. Later, it became mainstream news. Just like I didn't believe when somebody called me and said, I have a tape of CBS News saying mercury's good for children's brains. Or, hey, we got a clip out of PBS Boston where they have the inventor of the polio vaccine admitting they knew it was going to kill hundreds of millions of people because it had SV40 cancer virus in it, and they laughed and said, good, there's too many people. And then the tape came in the mail. I used to get these calls at the office that I or a secretary would take. I had like one person answer the phones, and people would tell me, no, I haven't. It would come in the mail. Stuff like that. Well, this ex-Stasi agent is hired to run Germany's censorship of xenophobic Facebook posts. We are literally battling former Stasi commanders. There's a new one. Wolf's dead. This is who we have trying to censor our posts in Germany, ourselves.
So there you have it. We have a Germany hired an East German ex-Stasi to run their whole free speech system, and I say that ironically. So yeah, it's like the headlines are so bizarre. It's like what Rob Jacobson, he was in here for the last segment, said, that it's like reality is so much more bizarre than fiction, and he can say, and it's like, and this is a good example of that, because it's like, we got an ex-Stasi agent telling Germans that they can't talk bad about migrants. So, Dalen, what's your take on all this?
I mean, it's really a chill on free speech. I mean, yeah, like you said, this is like coming full circle. You have a Stasi agent back in power, although I guess we could argue that probably many of them remained in power in Germany. But yeah, this migrant situation, I think it really tells you the agenda that they would put someone like...
Yeah, because you notice that the migrants are not going the country. I mean, there's all sorts of countries in East Europe that no war's going on at all. You know, it's completely peaceful. Well, you have the migrants skipping over those countries. They're skipping over Greece, Hungary, Austria, and all these countries to go to Germany, UK. So, and I mean, guess what countries are giving them free welfare?
Exactly. I mean, it's really unfair to the actual legitimate Syrians who are actually trying to flee ISIS, flee the war. And so, but you see the left who wants to use them as a political tool. They're not going to talk about.
What bothers me, it's like I talk about this, but then people are like, why are you so anti-immigrant for? You don't feel their plight? It's like, I've been talking about how ISIS has been funded by the West and NATO for the past several years. They're the ones that started this mess. But now we're pointing out that they're using these refugees as a political tool, just like how the Obama administration was using Central Americans, encouraging them to come to the U.S. like the past couple of years on these 1,500-mile journeys on these death trains, where a lot of these kids are like getting killed, or if they don't get killed by gangs on the death trains, they're getting killed in the freaking South Texas desert.
And you never hear anyone talk about the groups taking advantage of these migrants and immigrants, making money, smuggling them in, ripping them off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You never hear that.
Yeah, it's like even in Juarez on the Texas border, it's like they got all these warehouses that's just nothing but migrants where they're holding. Because a lot of these people, they spend all their money to get to the border, but then they still got to pay a human trafficker, also known as a coyote, to bring them across the border. So you got all these like warehouses of people that are just crammed up. It's like literally like a slave ship where you have people that are like, living in this hot warehouse with no AC, just hundreds of them crammed together. And then what we have is the migrants, a lot of them, they pay all these hundreds of thousands of dollars to get into America, and then they have to work out the debt. I mean, there's no surprise. You go on Craigslist in any big city and you're going to see all these ads for these massage parlors and all that. And all of it's like just people that were smuggled in the country that are practically sex slaves.
Yeah, I mean, it's really unfortunate, too, because like you said, they're getting taken advantage of by the coyotes in these groups, and then they come to the United States and they're just used as a political tool. But back in Europe, of course, with the migrant crisis, you're not going to hear anyone defending, the actual legitimate migrants who are coming from Syria. It's all about just, let them all in, don't check any of them. We're going to use them, of course, as a political voting bloc and whatnot.
Yeah, it's like we got to worry about, we have to have the TSA on every street, Viper squads and this and that, saying, oh, well, we don't know who's a terrorist and who's not, so we got to check you, highway checkpoint. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Coming from the Middle East, coming from war zones where ISIS is known to be.
It's like, it's harder for me to get on an airplane because I got to go show all these forms of ID and get searched. But for people coming across the border here in the U.S. and in Europe, they don't have to be searched at all.
Yeah, and like I said, they're not talking about the things they go through to get here, but also they're not talking about the fact of the policy that created it. Last night during the debate, they said, the reason Iraq is so terrible is because we left. Well, you're not talking about why we were there in the first place and the cause of the destabilization. That's the same thing overseas. It's like you're talking about all these migrants, but why aren't we talking about the policies of the foreign policy that's making them all flood the Middle East to go to safer countries? Yeah.
It reminds me of an article I think you did a couple of years back where I think it was up in Seattle, where they put up all these security cameras to watch outside. Like I think it was like out on the coast, right? But then they switched the cameras. They turn around to watch the public.
Yeah, that was on the waterfront. That was part of the.
Yeah, it's a microcosm of what's going on in America. They set up all this. They use ISIS to say that we don't know who's a terrorist, so we got to put up all this whole police state. Get rid of your rights. 100 miles from every border in America is a constitution-free zone, so on and so forth. But then they use that as an excuse to get all the MRAPs, get all the grenade launchers, small town Georgia cops. I read about one story in Georgia where this town of 800, they gave the whole police department, it was like 3 people, all the scuba diving gear. There's not any water there at all.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what Alex and Infowars has been talking about for years. I mean, I remember Alex, following 2001, said this whole buildup, this police state buildup, it's going to be turned back onto the American people. And of course it has been, just like he said it would. So
Yeah, it's something we've been documenting this for last several years, and we're about the only, I don't mean to brag, but we are about the only media operation that will do that. We go hardcore 100 proof. So if you would love to support us for this money bomb, please do so. We definitely need the support. We need to get on satellite. Right now, I think we're potentially reaching like 1.6 billion people on Facebook alone and Twitter and all that, social media. But now what we want to do is get on satellite, get up in space, and so all these TV stations can grab our show and show it to a mass audience. So if you'd love to support us, we really need the support. You can reach us at 888-253-3139. Again, it's 888-253-3139. And also, another way to support us is try out our products. We're running a bunch of specials right now, free shipping for the duration of the money bomb until this afternoon. We got 20% off Survival Shield, 20% off Super Male Vitality, 20% off Brain Force. It's one of my favorites myself. Personally, I take it. 15% off Deep Cleanse, 15% off Secret 12, and also 15% off Oxy Powder. And all these products that I've used personally, and they have been a tremendous effect on my life and my energy levels. And, I started working out more, get up like 6 a.m. now to go to the gym, knock out a workout before work. Brain Force in particular, it's allowed me to it's weird for me to explain, but I can now think without thinking. It's like I can come up with thoughts and ideas without having to give it too much thought. And it's just like automatic.
We can definitely tell when Kit's on the brain force at work.
Yeah.
He definitely shows a difference.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I mean, I want to thank, all the viewers too. I mean, it's been so great. One of the best things about this Money Bomb so far is actually going over to the customer service side and answering phone calls and taking donations. I mean, I had one guy from Australia who bought $1,000 worth of Infowars Live products, and just to hear how passionate and like.
Yeah, we went. Like last year in the summer, went out to Marietta, California, to the where they had a big illegal immigration protest outside Border Patrol. And I got out there. We're in the middle of the desert. Like, it's like inland California. And it was shocking to me that I had like one gentleman that came up to me, was like tears in his eyes, wanting to shake my hand. And I was like, it's like I'm in the studio all day. I'm talking to a camera. Definitely I'm reaching millions of people, but when you're inside the studio, it's just like you and a camera. So it's like you don't really realize what kind of reach that you're hitting people. So we definitely appreciate the support. Yeah,
I mean, it's a blessing to work here. I've been here over a year now, and to go over there and hear all the great people calling in who's been supporting us and helping us reach our goal of $1 million to get on the satellite. It's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's always bothered me as a kid because I always felt like I was being lied to. You watch, but you couldn't. It was like what Winston said in 1984. It's like he knew that there was what he was being told was a lie, but he didn't know the specifics of it. So he could never really debate it, Oh,
yeah. I mean, I look back at like the things I learned in school. I'm like, they didn't teach you about, Operation Northwoods in school and all these historical important events that I think everyone needs to know about. So, yeah, I mean, I'm so glad. Like I said, I'm still an Infowars fan. I work here, but I'm an Infowars fan. So I'm definitely grateful for all the information Alex has brought.
And one thing that we've had an effect on was actually ISIS recruitment over this past summer. ISIS was admitted that we're having trouble getting more people overseas because now people are reading sites like Infowars, the Drudge Report, World Net Daily, so on and so forth, realizing that the West has been backing ISIS in a proxy war against Syria for a regime change.
And I believe ISIS has a magazine that they give out to their members every month or so, and there's actually an article in there telling them don't believe these Western conspiracy theories that ISIS is Western.
That's not ISIS, it's probably CIA that's putting out that magazine.
But yeah, so that's pretty interesting that but I mean ISIS is still making, gains in different areas across the Middle East. So.
Yeah, and I think you wrote an article yesterday about over 80% of Syrians believe US created ISIS. Let me read this briefly. More than 81% of Syrians believe the United States and its allies are behind the creation of this Islamic State terrorist group, a recent survey found. Conducted by research firm ORB International, the survey questioned over 1,300 Syrians throughout the country on matters regarding the Islamic State and the nation's ongoing turmoil. 81% of Syrians polled believed that ISIS was a foreign American-made group, the survey stated.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. And I mean, if we really want to analyze the situation with ISIS properly, we got to go back to September 11th, which, of course, all this policy comes out of, and this sort of Zabigny, Brzezinski, Wolfowitz, Rumsfeld amalgamation. And so, of course, we know the famous clip of retired four-star General Wesley Clark, who was giving an interview to Amy Goodman from Democracy Now!, where he said, after 2011, I went to the Pentagon, 2001, September 11th, I went to the Pentagon and I was told of the plan to invade 7 countries, which included Syria, Libya, Iran. And of course, this was before Obama was in office. So this shows that Obama's just been a continuation of the Bush doctrine that we saw during his presidency. And so we move forward with the Arab Spring emerging out in the Middle East. I remember telling people, of course, doing my own analysis, but also listening to Alex at the time, I remember telling people, like, the Muslim Brotherhood is going to come into power in Egypt. That is what the Obama administration wants. And everyone said, you're crazy. The Obama administration wouldn't put a terrorist group in power in Egypt. Of course, they came into power. And not only that, but President Obama gave them tanks and fighter jets. That was mainstream news at the time.
Yeah.
And so we fast forward, and it's like we go to Libya, just like the plan said it would. Obama told us that, of course, that these were freedom fighters as they were cutting people's internal organs out. And
they said the same thing about Al-Qaeda.
Yeah. As,
they were the freedom fighters in Afghanistan.
Remember when Muammar Gaddafi fell, I believe it was Vice News was on the ground. They sat there and filmed at the courthouse in Benghazi as a giant Al-Qaeda flag was risen above the building, and I believe it was Infowars spoke out against it. Mainstream media didn't touch it. Dennis Kucinich, former Democratic congressman, he came out and did a video on it as well. So we've been lied to this whole time, and yet somehow we keep moving towards this situation now where we're in Syria, all these so-called, Syrian rebels who are really jihadist proxy soldiers coming in from Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia.
And it's not us saying that, it's the Pentagon itself. There was a 2012 leaked document from the Pentagon and the State Department said that the general situation in Syria, the Salafists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and Al-Qaeda in Iraq are the major forces driving the insurgency in Syria. The West, Gulf countries, and Turkey support this opposition, meaning ISIS, while Russia, China, and Iran support the regime. And one of the reasons why the West and NATO and Turkey and Saudi Arabia, they're backing ISIS in this proxy war against Syria is because Qatar, which is a country that's surrounded by Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf, wanted to put a pipeline running from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, through Syria, into Europe. Russia, I believe, is like the largest exporter of natural gas into Europe. That's the main supplier. But Qatar is also a big, huge game player in natural gas. So they wanted a pipeline, but Assad, who's allied with Russia, he didn't want to do it.
And I think there's multiple sort of reasons why in the Middle East. Of course, there's, like you said, there's the financial reasons. There's just the...
and then you have the Shiite versus Sunni.
Yeah, and then you have just the military-industrial complex aspect. And then, of course, we have, the larger, I think, like I said, this sort of Zbigniew Brzezinski grand chessboard policy of encircling Russia, knocking out the allies, moving towards taking out the other superpowers. Iran, I wouldn't necessarily call them a superpower, but they're next on the list. Of course, Russia, China. And so, we see, like I said with the article, the majority of people polled in Syria believe that ISIS is a U.S. creation. Now, I don't know if they're necessarily the U.S. sat down to let's create this ISIS group, but as you said from that document...
Well, they were there. You already had Al-Qaeda in Iraq, which by itself was an offshoot Al-Qaeda, which was offshoot the CIA, kind of helping out the Mujahideen. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Back in the... when Russia invaded Afghanistan in the late 70s, and it was like a 10-year war. I don't think they pulled out until like the late 80s. So you had the CIA in there, and also a proxy war, just like Syria, where they were backing the rebels in Afghanistan to fight the Russians. It's just exactly what we see in Syria right now, except the rebels are ISIS. They're way worse.
Yeah, exactly. And Michael T. Flynn, the former head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, he recently gave an interview to Al Jazeera where he admitted that he'd seen this document. He said, yes, I saw this document, and basically admitted that, yes, ISIS was viewed by the West as a tool in order to justify further intervention into Syria. So that's why we see, one of the things I brought up in my article was the accidental, who knows, airdrops that were going from our military to ISIS that were falling in ISIS hands, and they kept getting weapons and food. And I quote an Iraqi gentleman in the article who said, we know the U.S. is giving them weapons and food. I mean,
there's no such thing as moderate rebels. You had moderate rebels, but they got pushed out because ISIS was getting so well funded by U.S. arms back in 2013.
Yeah. So, and who did Obama call the so-called Great Rebel Group? He said the Free Syrian Army, and this is the group.
Yeah, and then you have the Free Syrian Army and the media admitting that, we're working with ISIS because we have common goals.
ISIS, they have the same goals, exactly, and it's to overthrow Assad. I mean, that's the West goal.
Yeah, you hear this. If the Free Syrian Army was not ISIS, you would be seeing reports of them fighting ISIS as well as Assad's regime. We'd have like a free front war right now between the moderate rebels, ISIS, and Assad. But you notice we don't see that at all. Right now, it's just Assad and his Russian allies and ISIS.
Well, I believe the Obama administration, I have the article there, spent $500 million to train a legitimate rebel group. They ended up only being able to train 5 rebels. Yeah. That's all they could find because so many of them in the Middle East that are in that country now are radical jihadists, coming from all these countries, like I said, these Western countries. These Western-backed countries in the Middle East. And so there is no legitimate rebel group. And we've had countless guests on to back up this, this not claim, really, this fact, like Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, of course, who's famous for Operation Able Danger, and Stratus Ivy, who went after bin Laden in the 1990s. And so, this is a well-known fact that a large majority of these so-called rebels are Western-backed, and their goal is... the West goal is to use them as a tool to overthrow Assad. It's simple as that.
Yeah, you got Turkey that's been known to be training ISIS militants to go fight in Syria within Turkey. That's a NATO country. That's a U.S. ally. You have there's a video that was shot, I think, in January of ISIS militants caught on a subway, just casually riding the subway in Istanbul. You go outside Istanbul. There's you go to a clothing shop and they sell ISIS gear, T-shirts, hats, flags. So, yeah, it's like Turkey's it's just not only is the government supporting ISIS, but there's not really that much of backlash between the Turks either. It's like you do have a lot of Turks that are like, we don't like what the government's doing, especially in the military. We had the prime minister of Turkey who was caught shipping guns and arms to al-Qaeda because one of his public prosecutors got tipped off on what he was doing. He was using the country's, I think, the intelligence agency there to ship trucks in from Turkey into Syria with all these munitions. And so one of the prosecutors found out about it, told militaries, hey, why don't you check out these trucks, see what's going on? Sure enough, they stopped 3 trucks going into Syria. They're loaded with equipment, like anti-aircraft, mortar rounds, all this stuff. That's the one thing you don't hear the mainstream media ever commenting on. It's like, where is ISIS getting all these weapons from? Because these are not weapons that you're like, oh, well, they're getting them from the Syrians they're fighting against. But it's like, that doesn't explain all of them.
And, of course, we know that's what Benghazi is about. I remember as soon as that situation unfolded, and it's kind of turned into a political football, with Republicans, Benghazi, I get it. But, it was, again, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer and others who came on at the time and said this was a weapons transfer from the Obama administration to take weapons out of Libya, out of Benghazi, to eventually make it to Syria. And that's all coming out. That all came out. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Cy Hirsch did a huge article about the rat line, which have totally vindicated everything we said. And so it's just all coming out that, exactly, ISIS is just a proxy tool to take on Assad and then eventually other groups in the Middle East as well.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous what's going on. And you have the Western media that's completely controlled by the establishment. And people are like, oh, they're getting their orders from the CIA directly. It's like, not really. They do at times, but what we see is you get these networks of establishment insiders that work with their heads of the media operations, reporters, not just reporters, but, the heads of major news organizations that are buddies with politicians. They go to each other's weddings and whatnot. So you kind of have this whole networking of the state and media kind of complex.
And I think that's a thing a lot of people get wrong. They think, ISIS is, quote, CIA, therefore every ISIS member is, getting phone calls from Langley, which is not how it works. As Alex has said many times, if I took a bee's nest and I shook it up and tossed it in a room full of people, I wouldn't be telling each bee who to sting and when to sting them. It's the West is steering these groups. They created the situation for them to come out of that, out of the destabilization of Iraq, and now they're steering them and using them. So it's not that they're directly controlled. It's just that they have the same end game as the Pentagon, criminal elements.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the debate last night, I was talking to Rob Jacobson about this for a little while on the last segment. I'm sure you watched some of the debate. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I caught it briefly. I was watching David Knight and Leanne and Biggs and Jakari's breakdown of it. And, it's a lot of the same that you would expect from Republican debate. There was a couple of things said by Rand Paul that I agreed with as far as his views on
definitely
drug policy and foreign policy, talking about, he talked about, why are we going to be arming these groups? I don't want to, both sides of the civil war, quote unquote, aren't good in Syria. So I definitely agreed with those statements. As far as that, I didn't hear too much that really.
Well, what really caught my eye is, I told Jacobson this in the last segment, is the fact that it seems like the media is propping up Jeb Bush's practically dead campaign right now. His campaign is not much better than Rick Perry's was before he left the campaign. You got dead Jeb Bush. He's got a lot of issues getting support, getting money, just like Rick Perry did. But yeah, we see the media kind of like treating like Jeb Bush, he's like the Weekend at Bernie's guy. He's just this dead candidate they're propping up everywhere. They're putting him in the podium. He's like the Hillary version on the Republican side. Those are the two they want, and it's not. Absolutely. Right now. Yeah, if
he pulled a Hail Mary last night, by the way, guys, by admitting that he smoked weed. He admitted that a couple of years ago he smoked weed. That was his Hail Mary pass. Bring his campaign back around to the young people.
Look at me, I'm hip kids.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I'm not totally against the war on drugs. I smoked pot back in the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meanwhile, they showcase the harsh laws and the harsh drug enforcement laws in Florida.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's interesting you point that out, Marcos, or one of our producers, is that Florida is a huge prison system state. I've heard stuff that said that you haven't lived in Florida long enough, you haven't gotten arrested because it's like Texas. I don't think they have an income tax, but they make a lot of money off the prison system and flooding people into that system.
It's also a well-known drug hub. Not only is it a harsh punishment for drug offenders, it's also one of the biggest trafficking states.
Yeah, of course, Miami right there. So
Miami right there. Plus, they cook a lot of meth. They make it at home there.
Yeah. It's just like the whole lanternfish kind of allegory. Is like you got the government that keeps a monopoly on the drug trade by legalizing it, which ends up raising the prices. So you got all these people that are broke, desolate, can't do anything in life. So they get into drugs, start selling drugs. They get busted eventually. And then you see they get thrown in the prison, like in Florida and other states, where they're working for literally 25 cents an hour. So it's basically it's basically slavery. I mean, you got the prisoners that are making money working for they're making barely any money working for the state.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the prisons generate revenue in the large accounts in the shareholders who change every few years.
A lot of people don't realize our prisons are run by corporations. I mean, a lot of them. I mean,
especially in Texas.
Yeah, they're bought out they're basically built by these large corporations that work with Bureau of Prisons.
They become accounts who showcase that they can generate profits enough to sell it off to the next group of investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who then do the same thing. So there's no actual investment in the people behind it either. It's just an investment in generating numbers.
Yeah,
total
exactly.
revenue.
And that's something I kind of, I'm for drug legalization. I mean, just in the fact that I make it a state's issue, let the states decide. But I remember one candidate said, we can't be up here telling kids that marijuana is the same as drinking beer, which is so ridiculous because alcohol is probably the worst thing for you.
You don't hear about
so many deaths. There hasn't been one death in the recorded history of humankind for marijuana.
Yeah, you go to any dive bar here in Austin, you see people drunk, they want to fight each other, but you never see people that are high on weed really wanting to fight each other.
That reefer madness era mentality that's still going on. But I think with the younger generations, I mean, it's not, you don't even have to support marijuana. You don't have to smoke it. You don't have to.
Yeah, that's what bothers me. It's like, oh, you're for marijuana legalization. You must be a pothead. No, I don't smoke pot at all. But exactly. It's but I don't like this concept.
Giving others the choice in a free country. I mean, simple as that.
It's becoming a business that strips people of their rights.
Yeah, it's
money generating business that is. The whole business is stripping people of their rights and putting them in cages.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like this whole, it's basically all these crimes that have no victims, victimless crimes. It's basically you versus the state.
And the reason why the drug war is important is because that's where police militarization also spawned out of.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Not just ISIS, too. So it's like you get all these departments to get all the Pentagon 1099 program, all the MRAPs, grenade launchers, scuba equipment. And they say, oh, well, we got
bayonets.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's interesting you bring that up is because they use the whole war on drugs as justification that, oh, we gotta, they're escalating the violence. We got to escalate too.
And of course, violence is down, of course.
Yeah.
But you never see those statistics showed.
No.
Here, though, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you should support us. If you want to call in, give us a donation. Our phone number is 888-253-3139. Once again, this is the Infowars.com 2015 Money Bomb. And if you call in, we also have some specials products. Free shipping for the duration of the Money Bomb for until this afternoon. We got 20% off Survival Shield, 20% off Super Male Vitality, 20% off Brain Force, and also 15% off Deep Cleanse, 15% off Secret 12, and 15% off OxyPower. Again, we got operators standing by. So once again, the phone number is 888-253-3139.
And you'll never know who will answer the phone. I mean, everyone in the crew's been over there. Joe Biggs, Lan McAdoo, Jakari Jackson, yourself, myself.
Yeah, I did 2.5 hours yesterday, actually.
Yeah, and so, I'm going to go back and do it again today. And so, I mean, it was really, like I said, it was probably the coolest thing about this Money Bomb so far was being able to talk to.
Yeah, we also sell storable food, also some survival products. What kind of survival products do you have, Jay?
I mean, I just ordered some of our survival food. I'm pretty excited to get that in the mail. Of course, I'm stocked up on all the Infowars Life products, the nascent iodine, which is probably one of my favorite products. I remember when I first got the nascent iodine, I originally came from Washington State, so I was worried about Fukushima. I didn't know what was going to happen, so I bought the nascent iodine. I took it for a week and didn't really feel anything, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then I remember the second week, I didn't know at the time, but I started detoxing, and I didn't really feel good, and I was like, man, what is this? I almost stopped taking it, but then I went through it because I figured out it was the detox. And I remember, I mean, I'm such a night owl. Anyone who knows me, I'm a huge night owl. And I remember the last night of the detox, on the second week of taking that nascent iodine, man, I went to bed at 8 p.m. that night, and I was like, this is weird. Why am I going to bed so early? And I woke up the next day at 6 a.m., no joke, with more energy than I probably had since middle school. And like, so I really support the nascent iodine because that's was probably my favorite product.
Oh, absolutely. And also, you know, it ties into the whole survivalist kind of, you know, nascent iodine, and as well as survival shield and the products that we sell, the emergency food. So I'm slurring a little bit, but you know, people are so dependent on the government right now, and they don't think about stuff like that. You know, you go to anyone's house, it's like, what are they going to do if their water gets shut off? What are they going to do? Because people expect to go to the they can just go to the grocery store whenever they want. But grocery stores, they don't stock food. You know, you notice in the back of them, they got 18-wheelers that come in every day. They're just they just stock food whenever they got. You
know, recently the power went out in Austin not too long ago.
Yeah.
And it kind of gave me wow, you know, especially how hot it is here. I mean, yeah. I'm sort of getting used to the heat here, but I mean, if the power goes out, you know, you don't have air conditioning things. Yeah, you start thinking about wow, you know, what if I don't have electricity to cook food and do certain
That's the thing. Everybody's always addicted to Facebook too. That's their main, or their cell phones. That's their main line of talking. But it's what are you going to do when that goes out? You know?
Right.
I mean, my grandfather, for example, he's big into ham radios, and you know that's how they communicate. You could talk to someone from if the atmospheric conditions are good, you could talk to someone 1,500 miles away on a ham radio. So that's kind of what we need. And I think we do have a clip, right, guys, of I think his name is John Wesley Rawls, who's talking about the importance of using ham radios and kind of other things, and how you can protect yourself and your family by having all these different methods of not only communication, but just kind of basic survival stuff that
backup plans.
Yeah, backup plans that people don't have anymore because they're so dependent on technology. So we have that clip ready. Let's play it.
Clip is ready. Rolling.
Falling asleep.
To focus on communications, that's one of the things that we have been writing about year after year in Survival Blog, is the importance of every family having multiple modes of communication. I do recommend that people, even if they don't want the shackles of an FCC license, at least go to a ham radio swap meet, talk with some of the old timers there, and get yourself set up for both 2-meter and HF communications equipment. And for point-to-point communications at an individual retreat or ranch, I recommend the MERS band radios. That's MURS, which stands for Multiple User Radio System. It's a unlicensed band that is, it sits fairly close to the CB band, but it's very underutilized. It will not be crowded in the event of a crisis, at least in suburban and rural areas. And again, there's no license required, and it will be your means of communication. It also sits right next to the National Weather Service frequencies, so you can have your handheld MERS walkie-talkie that's programmed with both your local MERS push-to-talk frequency and the National Weather Service alert frequency, which sits right next to that band, as well as having perimeter security via a system called a Dakota Alert. I've written a lot about that in my blog. The Dakota Alert system also uses the MERS band frequencies, so that one handheld radio can be your solution for push-to-talk, to talk with your neighbors and folks right there at your retreat for coordinating retreat security, as well as having access to weather alerts and being alerted when someone's entering your property through a Dakota Alert infrared driveway alarm system.
All right, Thalen, what do you think about that? About, using ham radios and whatnot as kind of a backup plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I've never used one before, but I see it's pretty a thing. A lot of people are interested out here in Texas. Yeah. I've noticed, so it's something I definitely want to look into. And
if I'm not mistaken, you're big into kind of being security on the internet too, right?
Yeah, cybersecurity. Protecting yourself from all the adversaries, whether it's the NSA. Although if the NSA's after you, you're in trouble.
Yeah, so you got it's two interesting concepts. You go back to kind of primitive, basic stuff like ham radios and whatnot, to keep you from being too dependent on the internet. But when you are on the internet, you also got to think of ways to protect yourself from the government intrusion.
Well, think about, our society's getting more and more reliant on technology, which of course has its positive and negatives. I remember Alex years ago. I remember when he was talking about the Internet of Things. He was saying, in the future, your light bulbs are going to be spying on you. And
you got bags of potato chips that are spying on you. Literally, they put these little microchips in it.
Yeah, and news organizations, I remember at the time, made fun of Alex, saying he thinks the light bulbs are spying on you. That's mainstream news now that you have light bulbs that
the IntelliLights
controlled by your phone, and so people can literally hack onto your Wi-Fi connection, jump through your phone into other devices in your home. So we're kind of in that 1984 future that what the former head of the CIA talked about in Wired magazine, Petraeus. He said, in the future your dishwasher is going to spy on you because they're all going to be interconnected. So.
Yeah, and let's give out the phone number for some phone calls. It's 512-646-1776. Call in the show. Talk to Mikhail Thalen as well as me, Kit Daniels. Once again, the phone number is 512-646-1776. Yeah, so like on email, for example, what's one good way that people can protect themselves? I'm kind of sort of familiar with using public keys and this and that, but I'm not too familiar with it.
Well, PGP is probably the most difficult thing that there is.
That's why I never really got into it. I got exposed to it like in around 2000. And kind of the crypto movement, if you want to say, they're kind of trying to move past using, the PGP public-private key system. Because although it is secure, we know that from NSA slides and whatnot that the federal government hasn't been able to break that cryptography. It's been around since the 90s, and that's really strong. But I think the future's moving probably more towards instant messaging and whatnot like that. But email, unfortunately. Yeah, I saw some programs recently on the I think the iPhone store with kind of this ways to secure chat and whatnot.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good programs out there that I suggest anyone who's listening download. For example, if you have an Android, there's two apps, one called Red Phone and one called Tech Secure. This is made by a company called Open Whisper Systems, and they are free and they're open source, meaning all the code can be viewed by anyone. And even Edward Snowden has come out and said, these are really great products, and it's something I use every day, and it encrypts your text messages. Of course, the other party has to have it as well, so it's end-to-end encryption, which is the only real encryption. But also the good thing is that when all the texts come into your phone, it protects them in a database, encrypted database, because your normal texting right now, you get all these texts. The other apps on your phones, when you download other apps, says we can see your texts, right? They can go view all your texts, but this actually protects you from that. And so those are two great apps. And then if you have an iPhone, Signal is both encrypted calling and encrypted text messages in one, made by the same company. And Signal callers can call, Android people on Red Phone or text them on Tech Secure. And so that's just one thing people can do. Have your friends, have your family download that, and you'll have really, really strong encryption on your phone. Now, of course, this is to protect you from, low-level threats like police, even some federal agents.
Yeah, even if you're not doing anything wrong. I was told by a lawyer once before that there's literally, in any given state, there's 40,000 laws on the books they could bust you with. So it's you told me, it's never submit to a search, even if you're doing nothing wrong.
Exactly. And with these technologies like, Stingrays, MC catchers that police are using that are just ubiquitous everywhere, it's important to protect your data. And again, it's not about having anything to hide. It's about making the government respect your Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, if you don't have privacy, you don't have any rights whatsoever. You're no different than a slave.
Exactly.
So, all right, let's take Justin in Pennsylvania. Wants to talk about the drug war. You're on air. Go ahead, Justin.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing this morning?
Good. I heard you guys talking about the drug war, and I just wanted to say it's not a crime. It's a vice that they criminalize because it doesn't infringe on anybody's liberty when you ingest something into your own body. So it's not a crime at all. A crime is when you infringe on the next man's liberty, property, whatever it is. But you can take a drug. It's a vice, and that's what's wrong with the drug war.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Criminalized vice.
Yeah, I appreciate your call, Justin. I tend to agree. I mean, to me, I see a crime as being, you got to have a victim. You know, if the victim is the state that's got a monopoly on the use of force in a given territory, I don't see that as a crime at all. What do you think, Thalen?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, I mean, if you look at South America, they're having countries now that are treating drug issues like a medical issue instead of a criminal issue, and they're having great success with that. So, yeah, I mean, I see drug issues as something that shouldn't be handled by the criminal sector of law enforcement and whatnot, because as you said, you know, it's led to police militarization. It's led to so many issues like private prisons.
Yeah, prison industrial complex.
Exactly. So it's a really big issue. And I think, you know, and that's funny mentioning that because, you know, we now see things like the Silk Road and the dark web where people are buying drugs online. I'm not advocating this, but, you know, you're having a situation where people are using technology now to go get high quality drugs because they're cutting out, you know, the possible violent encounters with police and law enforcement.
Yeah, I saw that movie with Jakari recently. Alex Winter, director, probably known best as Bill from the movie Bill and Ted Excellent Adventures. He does documentary films mostly now. And it was an excellent movie, Deep Web. It talked about the history of the Silk Road and how the federal government threw Ross Ulbricht under the bus, Dread Pirate Roberts. They basically, the judge, and Alex Winters even told me, we had like a question and answer at the end of the movie, and he said that he was bewildered by what the judge said while he was there at the trial, was that they basically, the federal government kind of interjected this idea that Ross was trying to hire people to hitmen. There was no proof of that whatsoever. But they were still kind of floating that out there to kind of corrupt the jury to go against Ross. Yeah,
and of course it came out, of course, that DEA agents involved had stolen Bitcoin, like thousands and thousands of dollars worth, which I think was suppressed from the trial.
Yeah, it was. They wouldn't even talk about that at all.
And so I think the reason that the government went so hard after Ross Ulbricht is that they're terrified of these new ventures.
Yeah, it's what Alex Winter brought up, was that the judge basically convicted him of crimes that he wasn't charged with, just to make an example of him.
Exactly.
And it goes back into the whole, one good thing I like about the Silk Road was it gave people an opportunity to buy drugs so they didn't get ripped off. Not just ripped off, but they didn't get, attacked.
Or get bad drugs,
Yeah, bad drugs. Or they didn't get attacked by, corrupt criminals or even the state. I mean, that was one of the goals of the Silk Road, was to kind of cut down on the violence, because they realized that, people are still going to use drugs even if it's criminalized. So why don't we just give them a platform to use drugs so there's less violence and there's more knowledge about it too. People are like, there was like question and answer forums about using drugs, so people wouldn't just go and OD because they didn't know any better.
Yeah, and the Silk Road and all those drug markets kind of represent just like the most raw form of capitalism, where the person with the best product, and the best reviews, because all that stuff is based off review systems, has the best, so even if you don't support drugs, it's still an interesting experiment in the free market.
All right, next caller. Let's go to George in New Jersey, who wants to talk about the immigrants flooding Europe. George, you're on the air.
Hello, yes. I want to talk about that situation that you just mentioned, because I think that's where the Third World War is going to prove, because they were talking about that. AJ was talking about that in the morning, I believe, with a guest. I didn't get his name, I forgot. But, because they can't afford it. They're going to collapse soon, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there, but they're going to revolt.
Yeah, a lot of these countries, and especially Sweden, they're like socialist countries. And people say that socialism can teeter-totter and work somewhat if there's a small population, even though it really doesn't work, but it's kind of besides my point. But but once you flood a country with like 10 million people, it's like the whole country, a country that's based on welfare and giving benefits to population, it's going to collapse when you have too many people.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just basic economics, is that you have more people taking than giving, or, more people, reliant on the state, you're going to have issues. And all these heads of these governments in the Middle East, in Europe, they don't seem to have any problem with bringing all these people in, even though, as I think Paul noted in one of his videos, that people in the Middle East, Europe, have been voting against these sort of mass migration policies, but it doesn't matter, I guess.
All right, let's go to Buckley in Missouri, who wants to talk about common law. Buckley, you're on there.
Yeah, thanks.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. you guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
What you're doing. Yeah, I couldn't quite stay up all night, but you had me up till midnight.
Yeah, I couldn't either, to be honest. I had to get a couple hours sleep before I went on air this morning.
Yeah, I know. I'm on my first cup of coffee and a little fuzzy here, but basically, if you were talking earlier, if there is no injured party, there is no crime.
Mm-hmm.
But according to common law, the state cannot be the injured party.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great group out there that I'd like for people to check into. If you go to nationallibertyalliance.org, they're setting up common law grand juries in all counties across America. They've already got it going. It's a great project. There's 3,143 counties in America. They've already got common law grand juries started in every one of those counties. So if people will go to that nationallibertyalliance.org website, you can read more about this, because I think this is one of the solutions. We need to take back our courts.
Yeah, I agree, Buckley.
Our courts are nothing but that's statutory law. That is not law. It's not even law. It's statute and regulations. Mm-hmm. That's all it is.
Yeah, definitely, Buckley. I appreciate the call. That's one thing I always promoted was jury nullification.
I was going to say the same thing, too.
Because juries are supposed to be independent of the government. You're supposed to have in a trial, you're supposed to have the accused, the prosecution, and the jury. Kind of like how we're supposed to have a separation of powers in the federal government. But what's going on now is the prosecution is basically lassoed a jury into thinking they're one and the same.
Yeah, and we see a huge push against jury nullification. Even people that go just try to bring up the fact.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to what we were saying about the drug laws. It's like people are starting to realize that the marijuana laws are completely unjust.
And there's been cases, I think, of people getting arrested outside of courthouses holding up signs saying, know your rights, know about jury nullification. And the government seems to definitely be afraid of that issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk to Tim from North Carolina. Let's talk about the police state. Tim, you're on there.
Hey, nice job, fellas, talking about the space-time continuum raised rift. I was wondering what y'all think about drugged interrogation techniques, advanced drugged interrogation techniques.
I'm totally against that. I just don't think torture is the best way to...
George Washington was against torture. Even, the conservative, quote-unquote, hero, Ronald Reagan, was against torture. And we know that torture doesn't work because a lot of times people will just give you any information to make the torture stop. And drug torture is definitely pretty terrifying. Some of the things the CIA and that's been done over the Middle East. And we get people talk like things like scopolamine. I think Alex is talking.
It's interesting. You're torturing somebody that's probably doing a victimless crime, but who's really the aggressor in that situation? It's the state. And the victim is the person being accused that they're torturing.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other comments you have on that?
Yeah, I'm talking about local police departments in America doing this. This ain't something going on at Gitmo.
That's true.
It's right here in America.
Yeah, there's a big debate over different techniques police use when, interrogating people. There's the pressure point pain.
Oh, yeah. They put your hand behind your back to almost the point that it breaks.
Yeah. So that's a whole issue in itself.
And then you have police that are like, they know ways now to keep from their body cameras or they even on their dash cams, they will take a suspect away from the line of sight and they'll start yelling, stop resisting when the suspect's not resisting at all.
Yeah, and they're just bringing up the video the article, about Chicago, that quote-unquote black site that was there. And that was pretty, eye-opening. But, I can't really say I'm surprised, especially in those big cities like that. Man, those police departments are brutal. And it's unfortunate because cops like that are the reason. There's all this huge debate about police violence and violence on police and whatnot. And I think, the police really need to go after these super corrupt cops and get them out of there because they're making it worse for them. They're making it worse for the good cops. And, you saw the recent shooting of the officer Goforth.
Yeah.
And, there was even people who had been arrested by him who came out and was like, he was a great cop. And it seems like the good cops get the bullet and get attacked. Of course, there's no reason ever to justify it.
That's why I'm against collectivism because it's like us versus them, but you're not going after the person that's actually committing the crime.
Mm-hmm.
It's just this whole gang mentality.
Exactly, yeah. You can't... I'm against any violence against anyone. that's not defensive, of course. But yeah, that's what happens. These cops, just because they're a police officer, they get attacked, And it's
all right, let's continue on. Let's go to Cliff from Alaska, who wants to talk about Obama's recent visit to his state. Go ahead, Cliff.
Hi, it's great to get to talk to you guys today. I don't normally get to call in because I'm either listening to record it or I'm not sure.
Yeah, and appreciate you calling in. I know you're probably a couple hours earlier than we are.
Yeah, we're 3 hours. It's about 4-something in the morning here. So
yeah, we appreciate the support.
Yeah, so they shut down all the air traffic over Anchorage for about 3 days while Obama was here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a big to-do, him coming to Anchorage, and he brought his own private motorcade in. I'm sure that cost us lots of money. The air traffic was shut down, and so I hear some helicopters flying over Anchorage, and they sounded different. And so I looked out my window, and sure enough, there was like a couple of Cobras leading, 2 Hueys following, and then 3 of the big rotor helicopters, the tilt rotor helicopters. And I'm sure he was probably in one of those, and they were headed down to Seward to go down to Seward. And but the whole deal is, they spend trillions of dollars, over budget and everything in the United States, and then we got a president flying to Alaska, so-called president, flying to Alaska to meet Bear Grylls and film a series.
Yeah.
It's too bad we didn't have that security on 9/11, right?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring this up because it's like Thalen just said, the president, the Secret Service protects the president more so than the borders, And it's like, yeah, it goes back to this whole idea of feudalism where you got to protect the royalty and shut down the whole city and what have you. But yeah, we're about out of time. Appreciate the call and appreciate everyone's support. Once again, this is the Infowars Money Bomb 2015. If you'd like to call in and make a donation, get us on satellite or get some great products, the phone number again is 888-253-3139. Again, it's 888-253-3139. And we're running free shipping for the duration of the Money Bomb. And also, we got specials from 15 to 20% off a variety of products such as Survival Shield, Super Male Vitality, Brain Force, Deep Cleanse, Secret 12, and Oxy Powder. Once again, this is Kit Daniels, Infowars.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Kit Daniels 1776. Same thing on Facebook. Also follow us on Infowars Resistance News on YouTube. And appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks.
Mikhail Thalen, one of our writers, great writers on Infowars and Prison
Planet. Thanks again to all the fans and all of our supporters out there who make all this possible. I mean, we couldn't do it without you guys.
Yeah, we could. It'd be completely impossible to do without the support. People want to thank me, like I was telling you earlier on Marietta. Well, I want to thank everyone else. I'm nobody, I'm just a guy from West Texas, kind of learning the ropes. But it's through the people that I get my power from.
Absolutely.
It's all right. Well, we're signing off, but keep following. Money Bomb is going to continue for till the rest of the afternoon. We got some great shows lined up as well as guests. So once again, Kit Daniels
Rob Dew's coming up with Paul Joseph Watson.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, stay tuned for Rob Dew and Paul Joseph Watson.
In my arms. Yeah, that's Alex Jones, baby. All right. We're talking about
Infowars.com, which had its humble beginnings as a small website attached to Alex Jones's radio and Access TV shows, has become the leader in alternative news and information. And through the years, Alex has taken the financial support provided by listeners of the radio show, readers of the website, viewers of his DVD documentaries, and freedom lovers all over the world and reinvested that support back into the Infowars news operation. With your support, we've expanded our offices, built studios, hired reporters, video editors, writers, other support staff, and created the premier alternative news network. You made this possible with your support, and we sincerely thank you. The time has come to expand once again, and this time we want to literally launch Infowars.com into space. That's right, we're launching our own satellite broadcast signal to cover all of North America, and we need your help. But first, let us show you how it works. Shows are created live, like The Alex Jones Show, or pre-produced, like the Infowars Nightly News in HD. These shows are launched according to the atomic clock, and the HD signal goes through a closed caption data embedder, which sends a signal to a closed captioning service, and they begin the process of adding text to the screen. This is done in real time, and it is mandated by the FCC. The signal then goes to an MPEG transport streamer, which sends a signal to a satellite uplink facility. They blast the signal from the uplink satellite to the stationary satellite positioned to cover all of North America. The satellite is named SES-3 and run and maintained by the largest satellite distribution network, SES, which maintains a global satellite infrastructure to reach 99% of the planet's population. The satellite sends a signal back to Earth, where it is available to thousands of local television stations. It's also available for free to anyone who owns a C-band satellite dish pointed at 103 degrees west. Using a receiver, they can tune to 3,740 megahertz vertical and receive our broadcasts on Channel 11. There are over 2,200 TV stations in the United States, hundreds in Canada, and another 1,200 in Mexico that could potentially receive this free-to-air broadcast. Each one of these local stations is able to grab the satellite signal and broadcast it to millions of homes in North America, potentially to over 400 million people. There is an enormous cost in buying and maintaining the equipment, paying for the satellite bandwidth, and the cost of closed captioning service. The monthly service fees alone total nearly $40,000, which is why we're crowdsourcing InfoWarriors all over the world to help us reach our goal of $1 million, which will allow us to reach 400 million people. It's called Operation Money Bomb 2015. Imagine being able to reach 400 million people who are victims of mainstream media mind control. The ones who still believe in the left-right paradigm, enforced drugging, water fluoridation, and the plan of divide and conquer. Your support will allow us to help these people break free of their mental shackles, help bring about a peaceful revolution, and restore our republic. If you're able to help us financially reach our goal, then log on to Infowars.com/moneybomb and contribute what you can. But there's another way to help that will not cost you anything. Go to Infowars.com/moneybomb, download our informational packet, email it to your local television station, then follow up with a phone call to ask the station to carry the Alex Jones Show and the Infowars Nightly News. Everyone can join in, and we cannot prevail unless we have your help. So please, log on to Infowars.com/moneybomb today and help us make Operation Money Bomb 2015 a resounding success. Your support will help us reach 400 million people. I'm David Knight for Infowars.com. Thank you for watching Operation Money Bomb 2015 and for your support.
We've reached a critical juncture in the globalist program. That's why we're launching Operation Money Bomb 2015. And with the money we raise from this, we will be able to stay on the satellites and get on cable stations across North America, reaching tens of millions of more people right at the time they're receptive and looking for answers. So join us this September 16th and 17th. We're charging up, getting ready, and going in.
There's no doubt that our country is in serious trouble right now. And if you're wondering how on earth we ever got in this situation, well, I'll tell you how. When the Democrats showed their true colors, you got angry and you elected Republicans. And then when the Republicans showed their true colors, you got angry and elected Democrats. And when anyone suggested to you that both parties were corrupt and that neither side were looking out for your best interest, you acted like they were crazy. But the real definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. That's why it is vitally important that you wake up, America, and break the matrix. Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.tv, and The Alex Jones Show, because there's a war on for your mind.